I was muted my intro. The intro was bad, so that made it even worse. We're having seconds of silence followed by a quack. And now let's hear the music. So what you missed this is not a silent stream. This is actually day 98, 100 days of code. We're almost at 99, which is a famous song in Germany, like or in the 80s about balloons. But we're not here to talk about balloons. We're here to talk about children and what kind of children, React children, and more. And we need someone to help us with this because who else can explain this after this weird intro? It's Leon Andersen. Hello.
Hello, hello. I'm not sure if after this intro I can still do it. Like, it really destroyed half of my brain. No, just kidding. Yeah. Today I basically spent some time recapping what I learned and setting up some stuff for the website project, including Git and also my reference code, which is partly the code that you see here, which is from the Next.js tutorial on YouTube. I don't know the channel name, but maybe it's in the Sean something. Yeah, then I basically reflected on the Next.js tutorial, and I definitely want to also build a layout like this. And what even is this layout? It's one could say a little template where by building this, every page basically gets a navbar and a footer. If we go to where is it? App.js. There it is. We can see that we have a layout tag wrapped around component. So component is whatever component will be passed into the app. And the layout, interestingly, takes in the whatever it wraps as a prop, and we can access this by using the children prop name, and that's a special prop in React because, as you can see in the app.js, that we didn't include the prop inside of the tag of the component. So usually we have like prop equals prop values basically inside of the arrow brackets. And here we don't have it, and that got me confused. So I had a chat with GetGPT, and basically after long back and forth, got the info that it's a special prop name that's in the back end of the of React, and not only Next.js but React in general. And that is something that I did not learn yet or until now, even in the 10 hours or 9 hours of React that I already worked through. So that went pretty fast for explaining. Maybe we can look at some other stuff in this code as well.
What do you want to look at?
Skimming a bit through the individual files. So for example, the ninjas file, why not? Yeah, we have the get static props in here, and it basically yeah, now I have to think for a little moment to really oops. What is it doing? So I do know that I mean, what you can see is that we fetch data from JSON placeholder API, and we get basically all the data from that from those JSONs, and we basically, I don't know if that's something special for get static props, but I think the main thing is that it returns the data so we can then use it as a prop in our next or in our component. But I honestly have to say that I have to look into get static props a bit more, because it was just very, very briefly mentioned what it does in the tutorial. Let me go through const ninjas, export default ninjas, export const. Why is get static props exported? Is that actually necessary?
Yes, because Next.js for all of the pages, the default export is its page. Next.js expects the page component, and then optionally Next.js looks if you've exported and get static props, get static paths, or get server-side props. And if you do, then Next.js knows what to do with these for you. Basically, for you using these functions, populate these props here that get spread into the page components for you.
So if you wouldn't export it, it basically just wouldn't be executed, or how could I understand this?
Yes.
Okay. Can we go into the slug or ID file? Okay, here we have get static props and get static paths, where basically, oh yeah, I had a couple of questions on that one, I remember. So for some reason, oh no, I would have to check before. For some reason, there's only 10 users, I think, in this on this website, and the Next.js needs to know. I don't know if it's Next.js or whatever. I guess it's probably the get static path thing. It needs to know how many iterations there are, or how many basically yeah, in this case, ninjas or persons need to be rendered, and as far as I understand, it gets the number of how many through mapping over it. Something along those lines was the explanation in the tutorial, but I don't really I didn't really understand that. And I'm trying to remember what the fallback thing was as well, but maybe you can give me some feedback on what I said first before I make any further unbased assumptions.
Yeah, so the way it works is there is only a finite amount of users in this API, right? So there are only 10 users, as you said. And Next.js, the static ones are named static because the routes are statically generated. That means that they are getting generated during build time. If you look in the package.json, you see there are two different scripts, next build and next start. And build, like when you run next in developer mode, it's basically very slow because it can adapt on all of your code changes on the fly so that you can develop the app. But when you do next build, it basically throws out a bunch of dead weight that is only used for development and does a ton of optimizations to make your app blazingly fast. And during this build step, you have the possibility with Next.js to generate static pages. So that means that the page content for every user on each request is completely the same. And in order to know which pages exist in the first place, you need to tell Next.js, hey, when we have a dynamic route, such as this ID, for example, you need to generate the following routes. And you do that by using getStaticPath. So basically with this API, you can tell Next.js, hey, let's fetch all the users. And then for each of the user, let's create our paths here, which basically in the params, paths are objects and they have a params key. And in the params key, you need to define the key for the dynamic route. So if it says ID here, you need to define an ID here. If this says, for example, slug, which is something that is very common for blog posts, then this needs to say slug. So you basically connect all of the pages that Next.js generates, and then you give it back to Next.js. And then getStaticProps basically tells you, hey, if you're on this certain page, then this is how you get the data for the page. So you basically here we tell Next.js about the 10 users and the different IDs. And then here for each of the IDs, Next.js fetches the user during the build time and builds the page. And the static part of this means that this only happens during the build step. Afterwards, when your app finished building, you deploy the build version of it, and this now lives on the server for you. So that basically means if once it has been built, there is an 11th user added to it, this will not notice it until you rebuild it. And similar if someone, if there's a change for a user, for example, a user with the ID 2 gets a different name, then this change will not be picked up until the app rebuilds. But why do we do that? Why do we want to build static apps? Well, the reason for that is that if you fetch all the data at build time and then all the data is bundled in the server, you can create blazing fast apps, right? Because all the data is there. And as soon as a request comes in, Next.js knows what to send to the users. So the responses and the loading times will be super fast. Versus when you fetch the data dynamically, then the user will have to wait every time before the data comes through to their browser.
Is this realistic to use for like very interactive platforms like Twitter or stuff like that? Because like to me, it seems like how often can we rebuild? Like, is that realistic to rebuild all the time, or for what kind of projects would that work, and for or for what kind of projects do we use Next.js, and for what kind of projects don't we use Next.js?
So this is just one aspect of Next.js. So there's also the function get server-side drops, and this one runs on each request. So you can use this one to fetch dynamic data. So I'm basically addressing your concerns backwards, because you can use Next.js for anything. Next.js has something for you no matter what you want to build. That being said, when do you want to use static path and static props? Well, if the data rarely changes, then you probably want to make it static. And if the data changes frequently, then you want to probably make it dynamic using get server-side props, for example. And you can mix and match this within a certain app. So I don't know if this is the best advice, right? But let's say you want to build Twitter. You could maybe reasonably, before they created the edit button, nowadays you can edit your tweets on Twitter, but a couple of years ago, before Elon Musk bought it and renamed it to X, so I was just dead naming the platform, I'm sorry. So basically before there was the edit button on X, tweets could not be edited. So you could realistically say, hey, as soon as the tweet gets sent out, we can make the tweet static because it will never change again. Right. But nowadays with the edit button, maybe we want to have the tweet being rendered dynamic. However, there's even one more thing. So you can configure the rebuilds of this. So you could technically make the tweet static, but then using some APIs that we haven't looked at yet that are available on Next.js, and you can just read the documentation about them, you can trigger dynamic rebuilds of certain things, which makes sense if there's something that rarely changes. So for example, blog posts, maybe tweets could be something, or posts on X. So yeah, but the basic answer is Next.js can build anything, and it depends on the changes of, like, is it something that frequently changes, or is it something that changes of your data, what tools you want to use.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I guess for the blog that I'm building now, I can ChatGPT most of what I need, and take stuff from this example project of this tutorial. But I guess, like, for bigger projects, it definitely makes sense to do a longer or deeper dive into it again. And yeah, feeling curious about it as well. But yeah, I guess for now, most of the stuff I can GPT myself and take from here. I hope, though, that my comprehension doesn't suffer from being too pragmatic.
Definitely not. In fact, you're doing it the complete right way, because the thing that you learn, a bunch of stuff that you're never going to meet again, is exactly what people do who spend 6 years at a university to then get an entry-level job somewhere. You're on the fast lane by just building stuff, and the fastest way to learn something is to just do it. So that is why now it's a good time for you to build stuff before you accumulate a bunch of more knowledge and then build more things, because ultimately only building will also make it really, really sticky. Like it will seem weird to you in maybe even 3 months that children was new to you. It will be so clear because you've used it so much. And lots of these concepts will be like that, and they can only become that way by using them.
Yeah, I guess if I get into any limitations because of not understanding any of the building blocks that I'm using, or that I looked at so far deep enough, then I can just yeah, catch up on that anyway. I mean, like, get static props and get static paths feels to me like one of those things where I'm like, okay, I do know roughly what it does, but I don't really get it as much as many of the other concepts we worked through so far. But yeah, maybe after actually implementing it, we will see. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing building tomorrow.
Exactly, and I mean, get static path and get static props and get server-side props. These are concepts that take people usually quite a bit of time to wrap their to wrap their head around them. In general, the stuff like what happens on the server in Next.js, what happens on the client in Next.js, and then on the server, what happens at runtime, basically for each request, and what is done statically. Yeah, it's normal that takes a little while. But I wanted to make one more point about the learning in context. It's like you've now built your foundation for the language, and it's like learning a language. Like you first need to learn the grammar, you need to learn the basic words. You need to, if you're learning, for example, English, you need to learn articles like the, and then connect the words and within and stuff like that. But once you have a solid basis, then you can dive into a topic and learn about it dynamically. So you don't need, in order to maybe able to speak English, you don't need to know all the fancy words that maybe astronauts use. If you want to become an astronaut, then you learn about rockets and rocket engines. You can clearly tell that I'm not an astronaut because I cannot give better examples of like specialized words. But that's kind of the point here. So now that you know the basic language, you can pick up the stuff from Next.js, and you pick up only that stuff that you need, because by definition, if you don't need it, then why pick it up?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that philosophy. It's just sometimes a little bit uncomfortable when there's stuff that I can't explain, and which I'm not sure of how I'm going to implement it yet. Because yeah, the Next.js tutorial was a bit fast, I would say. But yeah, I can trust in learning by context and by building it, or by implementing and using it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well then one last point, which can only which will be you will be capable to do it in a day. So if you still feel a little bit uncomfortable around Next.js, you could also do the other tutorial that I sent you. So for context, I sent Leon 2 different tutorials. One was a YouTube video, and the other one was the official Next.js tutorial. And Leon only did the YouTube video, so it could help to also do the Next.js tutorial, because they definitely explain all 3 of them, and maybe seeing them one more time in a different context could make you feel more comfortable. But I would just say, whatever your instincts tell you, do that.
Yeah, we will see tomorrow where my instincts take me. I'm curious about diving in, but I'm also curious about the Next.js original tutorial. But there's I feel a lot of yeah, excitement about diving in as well. So I'll try diving in first and then go there, maybe.
Great. Then thank you everyone for watching. If you have your questions on your own, you can always leave them in the comments. If you're watching the recording, join us live. It's always fun. And this has been day 98 of 100 Days of Code with
Next.js and Leon Andersen. And my mentor,
Adam from 10xDev, aka the slapper of cracks,
aka the astronaut,
aka the next Gmail. Tomorrow, bye.
ABC. Until tomorrow.